Yes, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, weekend preview edition. Paulie and Teddy, big game breakdown. Game 3 of the World Series. Back in Wrigley Field, first time since 1945. And we got the key NFL games, our final London game between the Skins and the Skins and the Bengals. We also have Green Bay and Atlanta, and a huge Sunday night game with the Phillies and the Cowboys. We are 17-5 on a 17-5 run with the play today. We'll try to finish out the week with a 5-0 record. We'll get to that before we get out of here. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Let's start with all the football games, Teddy. I wouldn't be surprised if Gus Bradley's gone. That was so bad. I think you have to whack Bradley. Remember, Khan, the owner, met with the team the week leading up to the game. I would also fire Greg Olson, the offensive coordinator. That was horrible.
Yeah, let's start with this. Jags were a bad bet last night. There was heavy Jaguar money before kickoff. The 3.5s became 3s, and then became 3 even monies. There was a ton of syndicate money on Jacksonville. And honestly, they look as bad in the first half as an NFL team can look. They're outgained by nearly 300 yards. We could call it coach-firingly bad. I'm not convinced Gus Bradley makes it through today. We record very early in the morning. He might be fired already by the time you guys are watching this. Then again, let's not forget, Bill Belichick got fired in Cleveland before he landed in New England. Pete Carroll got fired in New England before he landed at USC and then Seattle. You can go on down the line. But make no mistake about it. Road teams are up against it for these Thursday night games, and poorly coached road teams are really up against it. And poorly coached road teams with no confidence and no chemistry are up against it the most. That was the situation that Jacksonville was in last night in that ugly loss at Tennessee.
Don't you ever put Bradley and Belichick in the same sentence again. Bradley now 14-41 as a head coach. Even the hoodie took the Brownies to the playoffs.
Stop. Do you remember when New England hired Belichick and everyone was like, yeah, whatever. I don't know. This guy's stunk. Belichick wasn't Belichick until he became Belichick. Bradley stunk it up in Jacksonville. It doesn't mean he's an idiot. It doesn't mean he's hopeless in every future situation. It means he got stuck with a bad team at a bad time and hasn't made them better. Yeah. Just like Belichick did.
All right, fair enough. How about what happened in the MAC? Akron steamed from 14.5 to 19.5. Buffalo led wire to wire. Toledo closed 15. They lost as well and trailed throughout. 57-1 money line parlay.
Oh, yeah. And again, I don't know if anyone actually hit the money line parlay. We saw Akron in the plus 550 range. Buffalo in the plus 550 range against Akron. It might be the bigger. Even though it was a shorter Toledo was a shorter favorite. I was really shocked to see the Rockets lose at home to Ohio. They were in the plus $8 range in that contest. So you put the two together, you're talking about 57.5 to 1. That's a nice score for anyone that hit it.
Well, these guys don't watch Sports Bet. They bet the Virginia Tech Pitt game from 64 down to 54. We gave it out at 57.5. Flies over.
Yeah. And look, the syndicates have been looking at the Pitt play calling and looking and say, oh, this team can't be going over. And every game they fly over by 3 touchdowns, and every game they're taking money on the under. Yeah. That was Steam City on the under last night. We gave it out, as you mentioned, at 57.5, thinking that's as low as it's going to go, and they bet it down to 54 on game day. And midway through the second, it's 9-0. They look pretty good, and then the drive chart looked like this. Touchdown, 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 end of half, touchdown, field goal, punt, touchdown, touchdown, field goal. Play of the day cashes with 13 minutes to spare. And yeah, it's been a real nice run. What are we, 17-5 for their last 22 right here on Sportsbet. Worth sticking around for the end of the show. We'll give out another play of the day.
Another bad bet. They bet the Wizards-Hawks game under down to 201.5, and that flew over.
Yeah, it got steamed down. The Hawks shot really well. They shot 50% from the floor. There was a lot of concern about whether the offense would take a huge step back without Horford and Teague, and Schroeder came in and played great. I thought Atlanta's backcourt outplayed Washington's quote-unquote elite backcourt. Not a good debut for Scotty Brooks in Washington, and not a good result for those who bet the under. Lots of those bettors seem to be out there.
Yeah. Dwight Howard looked pretty good for whatever that's worth. Bad for the books. Also in the NBA, game 1 of the doubleheader on TNT, they bet the Bulls. Bulls went from plus 1.5 to -1. What was this? Wade knocking down threes again.
Yeah, it was crazy. At one point in the fourth quarter, the combination of Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Wade, and Rajon Rondo were 8 of 10 from 3-point range and 3 of 23 from 2-point range. That's one of those spins of the NBA dice or spins of the NBA roulette wheel that you'll see on occasion. You see it in college basketball too, but a lot of randomness there. We talked about it on yesterday's show. That very first set of back-to-backs are tough, really tough for NBA teams. A good way to make money without doing any serious NBA capping the first couple of weeks of the season is look for teams in their first back-to-back with that second game on the road and bet against them. The markets did it last night, betting Chicago, obviously, a ton of money. And remember, the Celtics shot 50% and the Bulls shot under 40%, but the Bulls got all the energy stuff, plus 18 on the glass. They had 7 more made free throws, and of course they were hitting from beyond the arc as well.
Yep, all excellent points there. Up next, big game breakdown. We start with Game 3 of the World Series. The wind is howling out. We'll get to that, plus Green Bay, Atlanta, and the game in London coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Do your research before you bet. Check out our ratings guide to see which books have the best ratings and sign-up bonuses. Open up several accounts and shop for lines at SBRodds.com. Always be ahead of the game.
All right, back on SportsBit. Paulie and Teddy, time for big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Game 3 of the World Series from Wrigley. Indians against the Cubbies, Tomlin against Hendricks. So you want to go to the game. $3,000, standing room only. You want to sit outside it or go to a bar and get a table? $750. You want to get into the bar and just hang out? $250. They're going to make a fortune the next 3 days in Chicago. How about this, Teddy? A rare overnight total from Wrigley.
It's not just rare. It's, I believe, unprecedented. I was trying to think. I've been in Vegas since 1998, and I was trying to think of another time that I saw an overnight total on a Cubs game at Wrigley, and I couldn't think of one. So maybe there's one that I'm not aware of. Maybe there was some. I'm convinced there weren't any in the postseason last year for the Cubs, but the World Series is different, and the books are willing to take that gamble. They're willing to take a risk. All right, we'll put up an overnight, and if the wind kills us, it kills us. Guess what? Look at the look at the weather forecast. The wind expected to be blowing out at 20 miles an hour. Harry Carey, what would he say? Holy cow, I can't do it. You can do it better than me. But the bottom line is the books may get smacked around. I would expect to see a fair bit of over money if the weather conditions hold and the wind is blowing out like it looks like it's going to at Wrigley tonight.
Cubs minus 205, 8 the total. I might want to mention that. Tomlin, not a good fit for Wrigley, though, especially when the wind's howling out. Only 6 strikeouts per 9 innings. 84 pitchers through at least 150 innings. Tomlin was 80th in a home run fly ball rate.
Well, yeah. I mean, when the ball gets in the air on Tomlin, it's been a problem all year. 17.7% of his fly balls this season went out of the ballpark. So you say, gee, he's facing a pretty potent lineup, and the wind's blowing out, and he's not in regular season form. I think this is a problematic matchup for Josh Tomlin this evening, and that's why we're seeing a total as high as it is at Wrigley. You don't see a lot of 8s with the way the Cubs staff has been. It's certainly not postseason 8s for Chicago.
Well, a big reason why is because of Hendricks. 15-6 with a 2.24 ERA at home. He's worked with the wind all year. It doesn't bother him, and he's coming off that great performance in Game 6 against the Dodgers when he threw a 2-hitter.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs take do we call Schwarber being not able to be the DH at home a loss?
That's huge.
You know, I mean, his bat mattered in Cleveland. And the fact that he has not been cleared to play in the field, and the fact that, he's going to be a pinch hitter. If the Cubs are lucky, they'll get a couple of at-bats out of Schwarber over the weekend. That matters. What about this live betting stat you came up with, Paulie? 13 in a row for the team that scores first?
Can you believe that? 13 straight for the team that scores first in the playoffs. That is unbelievable.
Well, it's something to be aware of if you're getting involved in live wagering on tonight's contest, especially if the Indians score first. Maybe finds an underdog price on Cleveland.
See how Francona handles it, too, now in the National League ballpark. No DH, and that also means Santana. Santana hasn't played the field since 2012. So he hasn't said much about how he's going to use him as well. So I give Madden a big edge there with as far as making the moves, double switches, and all the other kind of shenanigans. Game number 2, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Our final game from London, Redskins and the Bengals. We have 47.5 Bengals favored. Look at Andy Dalton's numbers. Pretty much the same from last year, Teddy. but you look at the passer rating down big time. The big reason?
Yeah, I mean, his completion percentage is slightly better than last year, 67.5 versus 66%. His yards per pass exactly the same, 8.4 to 8.4. His interception percentage has dropped. Last year he was throwing 1.8, this year down to 0.8. He really hasn't thrown a lot of picks here in 2016. So why is the passer rating down from 2015 to 2016? Real simple. The touchdown percentage. He's not throwing the touchdown passes. 6.5 down to 3.5 this year. And you can blame almost all of that on the absence of one guy, Tyler Eifert. He caught 13 touchdown passes in 2015. He was their best red zone threat. Well, guess what? He came back in the lineup last week against Cleveland. And oh, surprise, surprise, Cincinnati with their best offensive game of the season. He was only in the game for 15 plays, but they were all the key plays, the third down plays, the red zone plays. Should be up to full speed this week against Washington at Wembley.
Skins got some good news. Jordan Reed and Josh Norman cleared to travel. No guarantees they'll play. Now will Matt Jones put his helmet back on? Nothing special, but they don't have a full-time guy behind him. Thompson, only 5'9", 190, mostly a third down guy. Keith Marshall, the rookie from Georgia, not a full-time starter in college as well. I expect the Redskins to try to throw it.
Yeah, and that wouldn't surprise me at all against a Bengals secondary that hasn't been nearly as good this year as it was last year. But Washington's been fairly balanced on offense. And again, I don't worry if Matt Jones is going to play. If they have to use Chris Thompson and Keith Marshall, so be it. They'll find a way to get 15, 20, 25 carries out of that duo, depending on the circumstance. In the NFL, very rare for a running back injury to move the needle for me, whether Matt Jones plays or not. It's not a difference maker side or total in my mind for the Washington Redskins.
One more before we break. LiveOddsSportsBookReview.com. Only 2 late games. What's the NFL doing here? Here's one of them. Green Bay at Atlanta. Atlanta 3, 52.5 the total. All the talk about Aaron Rodgers losing his touch. Is there enough? We got to put the focus on the Green Bay skill position players. Nelson can't get open. Niall Davis is the only healthy running back. Abadaris just is out for the year. He went on IR. Randall Cobb hasn't been in practice all week. Jesus, more issues with this offense, Teddy.
Yeah, and of course, all the focus, Aaron Rodgers isn't as good. Aaron Rodgers isn't as good. No, the talent around him isn't as good this season, and so far it has shown. And it's not just the offensive injuries for Green Bay. Again, this defense is really banged up. They're already playing without Sam Shields in the secondary, and a pair of cornerbacks, Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins, both doubtful for this ball game. And that's not what you want going up as Atlanta's offense. The first time all year that Green Bay has been an underdog.
Yes, and the last time they faced Julio Jones, 2014, he caught 11 passes for 259 yards. Micah Hyde, Green Bay DB on stopping Jones the week of the game. Every night before you go to bed, you got to pray. Game day, you got to wake up, you got to pray. He's just one of those guys that can get it done in all aspects of the game. Honestly, there's nothing he can't do, end quote. Now, Quinn's saying the right things, Teddy. Remember, they got off to the hot start last year and fell apart. Do you think we're going to see the same thing out of Atlanta? Are they going to fall apart after the hot start again?
No. I mean, again, look who they just lost to. They lost to pretty good, two competitive games against good teams. Dan Quinn, quote, "We talked a lot about that in the offseason, talking about the 2015 collapse. And our team is so different from 2015 to our 2016 team. We are equipped. We know the adversity that comes. We are a resilient group. I can't emphasize enough how different the club is from last year to this year with our mindset and the way that we attack. This is very much a statement game for Atlanta in a way that it's not necessarily a statement game for Green Bay. The Falcons want to wipe out the memory of last year's disaster down the stretch. They better stop that losing skid right here, although they'll have to do it with a defense that's still vulnerable, especially in the secondary. They got 3 rookies, 3 second-year starters. That being said, they played reasonably well against Russell Wilson and Phillip Rivers in their last 2 ball games.
All right, who wants a 5-0 week? I do. We'll get to that with the play of the day and the Seahawks Saints and the huge Sunday night game from Dallas. First place on the line with the Eagles and the Cowboys coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
All right, back on SportsBit, Paulie and Teddy, Betting Insight today. We continue with Big Game Breakdown, as always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Seahawks hit the road to take on the Saints. Seahawks 2.5, 48 the total. The Seattle D's been among the NFL's best for years, and it is a historically good game. On the field for 90 plays against Arizona without allowing a touchdown. But now the problem, 90 plays, the equivalent of almost 6 quarters of football. The flight home, the long trip, the early kickoff, horrible spot for Seattle.
It really is. I mean, Pete Carroll after the game talking about his defense, quote, incredible. And I agree, especially cashing a ticket on Seattle last week. Not a right side. Incredible. It was incredible all night long. It starts right up front. They ran 1 million plays right in the freaking A-gap. And they tried to stuff it at you, and we just kept slugging it out. It was just an incredible display of who they are and what they're about. These guys have been fighting together for a long time, and you can tell it means the world to them. They fought like that until there was no time to play. So, yeah, but that was last week. As you mentioned, 90 plays, the equivalent of 6 quarters of football. Then a flight back home, then a flight back east, an early start. And, oh, by the way, they're going against an offense that really hasn't been stopped at all in recent weeks. The only thing that stopped them was the Giants in week 2, and that was not in the Superdome.
Saints can't stop anybody on defense, though. Maybe they can take advantage of Seattle's fatigue with the up-tempo, go, go, go. Number 4 in the NFL in seconds per snap, and they want to go even faster here. Easy to do with the chemistry between Breeze and Cooks. The emergence of Cook is leading to the Breeze revival. You look at the passer rating, this graphic. 2014, it was 97. 2015, 101. This year, 104.3. Cooks, 32 catches, 486 yards, and 4 touchdowns, 15 yards per catch.
Yeah, but how about this? This is something that I'm surprised the mainstream media hasn't caught on to this one. Or at least I haven't seen it. Drew Brees is averaging more than 350 50 yards per game. That pace would set an all-time NFL record. He was asked about the all-time NFL record for yardage. Quote, no thoughts, just playing ball, just focused on winning games. That's all that matters right now, just trying to win. However, we can do that. It's a Saints game. That means whoever has the ball last is likely to win. Wouldn't you say, Paul?
I would agree with that. Yeah, going to be a wild one. And this is a hell of a game here. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Sunday night football. First place on the line. The Eagles travel to take on the Cowboys. Dallas 4, 43 the total. Now it's Wentz against Prescott. Could this be the next Brady Manning, Teddy?
Yeah, it could. I mean, in theory, 2 rookie quarterbacks that have had impressive starts to their careers. And, both teams got most of the time you don't want an early bye week. An early bye week has shown historically to be generally negative for teams. It's much better to have a bye week, week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10. That kind of splits the season up and keeps you a little bit fresher for the back half. But when you have a couple of rookie quarterbacks, the bye week matters, and an early bye week can help. So Wentz and Prescott both with the extra time in practice, but there is one major matchup difference between these two guys. The Eagles, without Lane Johnson, this is not an elite offensive line. This is one of the weaker offensive line in the NFL. In 2 games without Lane Johnson since his suspension, Philly got 239 total yards in the first game, 239 in the second game. 1 offensive touchdowns. They had 3 other TDs. They were all scored by defense and special teams. I mean, the Eagles have shown back-to-back games with a kick return touchdown. 2 different guys getting them. Great special teams. They've shown they can score non-offensive touchdowns on a regular basis, but offensively, Philadelphia's offensive line is a problem that is more likely to hinder Wentz's development than the Cowboys' offensive line is likely to hinder Prescott's, because Dallas' offensive line, obviously, as good as it gets.
Yeah, best in football, and they couldn't really show it last year because the quarterback play was so bad when Romo got out. But now with Prescott and Elliott, they can take advantage of what the offensive line produces. They did not skip a beat without Dez, and he is back Sunday night.
Yeah, and it's certainly not going to hurt the Cowboys' offense. With Dez Bryant on the one side, Cole Beasley's played well on the other side. Obviously, Elliott, but the key is having time to throw the football. That Eagles defense has been real good so far this season, by and large. It's not Carson Wentz that's led Philadelphia to a surprise start. It's the Philadelphia Eagles defense that has led them to a surprise start. A fascinating matchup considering the strength of the Cowboys offense on the line versus the strength of that Philadelphia defense, which basically all 3 units are rock solid for the Eagles. Very interesting game to watch. Here's my question for you, Paulie. Dallas, with that long-term track record of failure as home chalk, are you still worried about that, or is that something that is not a big concern for you at this stage of the season? Because they've covered a couple of numbers at home so far this season, even though Jason Garrett's got that miserable track record long-term.
Nope, not concerned now. And I think they have the right quarterback in there with Prescott. And as you said earlier, I watched that whole game last week and the whole game against Detroit. The offensive line has been horrendous for Philadelphia.
Yeah. And I'm with you on that. So you're going to find lots of trends and stats and all this stuff. They're going to say, look at the Cowboys. That's an awful track record. Guess what? We're halfway through the season, 2016, and that track record has not existed in 2016. And I'm betting in 2016. So I don't want the 5-year sample size. I don't want the 10-year sample size. I want, is this home field worth anything this year? So far it has been.
Yes, very good there. 3-0 so far this week with the play of the day. A 17-5 run, as we mentioned earlier. Now 25-10-1 on the football season. Thursday, we gave out Utah plus the 10. Saturday afternoon at home against Washington. And now, money time play of the day. Get up early. Back to London. Betting number 251-252. Bengals Redskins over 47.5. The Redskins are going to have a tough time dealing with Green, and now Eifert's back. They can't cover both guys. And the Redskins, a little sleepwalking job last week in Detroit for the first 3 quarters. That's not going to happen in this London game. Expect fireworks, expect a shootout. Over. 251-252, and let's make it a 5-0 week and keep it going with the play of the day. We'll recap. Best part of the week, the Monday show. We run everything down, college football and the NFL. We'll talk to you then. Have a good week out there. Tell your friends about SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com. See you, Teddy.
Yeah!